Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. In a second we'll introduce ourselves, but today we're going to talk about passive metering technology beyond traditional research. What is passive metering? Why might it be interesting to your business? And importantly, why now? Why is there a lot of interest and growth in the research market in passive metering? On the webinar today, you've got myself. I'm Chris Havemann. I'm the CEO of RealityMine, and with me is my colleague Chris Shaw, our Chief Operating Officer. Just want to tell you a few words about RealityMine before we start talking the main content. We are a mobile-first technology business that was set up in 2012 in Manchester and in the UK. We are specialists in passive metering technology, so we don't own our own research panels. We provide technology for people with panels to capture behavioural data. Our focus is on the market research industry solely, so we work for market research agencies. In fact, many of the world's major market research groups like Ipsos and Kantar are clients of ours, and panel owners themselves. And our client base is truly global, so we work here in the EU and key markets like the UK, France, Germany and others. We also work in North America and in the US and Canada, and markets as far away as Japan, Russia, Australia and so on. So a truly global client base. So a bit of context, and a lot of this is not news to any of us. If you think about the way the world's changing in recent years, if you look at the retail value chain, you see businesses like Sears, here regarded as a kind of typical offline retailer, being massively disrupted, as we all know, by e-commerce. Take Amazon and so on. Similarly, in media, it's not so long ago we were watching linear television, watching films at a movie theater or on a VHS recorder. Now, of course, we have massive growth in streaming video services like Netflix and Amazon Prime and YouTube. And in the consumer space, we used to think of a phone, maybe not quite as the model there on the bottom left corner, but certainly a phone which you could make calls with and maybe not so long ago send text messages. But now, of course, we're 10, 11 years into the iPhone era, with consumers literally doing more or less everything with the mobile phone. So forming relationships, managing relationships, learning about things, researching projects, products, and obviously transacting. Okay, so for researchers, our job is to follow that consumer through this world of tremendous change, and that's one of the things that passive metering can help you do. So what kind of questions are researchers trying to do now, keeping pace with the consumer? The world of research, as we all know, is focused on a lot of its measurement. So, what do people watch? What do people buy? And traditionally, a lot of research was survey research, trying to get at the why, the understanding behind the data that we see. But now a lot of things are happening which need to be measured and understood. And recall's notoriously inaccurate. So a researcher might want to realize, or might want to ask, how many apps is a consumer using, and what kind of apps are they using on their mobile phones and tablets? Which websites are they visiting across not just the major domains, but a whole long tail of sites that may be relevant to a specific category? How much time are consumers spending on certain sites or apps? What are they watching? Whether that's traditional media or it's new digital streaming services. How much shopping are they doing, and what kind of journeys are they doing? So all sorts of questions which are going to be hard to get at accurately using survey data, and hard to get at accurately using traditional media measurement currencies and retail currencies. So now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Chris Shaw, who's going to talk a little bit more about what is passive metering, how does it actually work, and what do we do?
So at RealityMine, we empower our clients to perform passive metering via our Reality Meter software. So the Reality Meter is an application that can be downloaded onto smartphones, tablets and computers, which passively logs the research participants' actual activity on those devices. We support all major platforms, iOS, Android, Windows and Mac OS. Our clients also have the option of white labeling the Reality Meter software with their own brand, so they can build their own brand identity and relationship with the panelists. Alternatively, it can be embedded as an SDK into our customers' in-house third-party applications, such as mobile-first survey applications. Now, historically, we recognise that this data can be tricky to handle, tricky to interpret. So a big part of our product strategy is focused around making passive data easier to use and easier to access. So we ensure that this data can be ingested into clients' own data management platforms and analysis tools through client-friendly data feeds, client-friendly APIs, and client-friendly data access tools. So it means that the journey to a better quality of insight is painless and efficient. Okay, so a researcher sat at their desk would get access to a variety of different data points that can support their research project. The Reality Meter gives us visibility of foreground applications, so the app that was actually on the participant screen. And this data is categorized and sessionized. You can see exact reach, frequency, duration metrics for any app that's used across our supported operating systems. Websites, so we can see the web domain, but also the full URL of a website that was being viewed or accessed by a participant. Now, our data processing pipeline strips out any background noise, giving you real user activity. So as a practical example, if somebody visits a website, there's a lot of what we would class as background traffic that relates to images sent to the device, adverts, analytic tags, which can distort reach calculations for website visitation. So with RealityMine's feed, you see true user activity. Ad exposure, so we measure YouTube adverts, but we're also able to detect predefined adverts on other platforms using a combination of digital fingerprinting and automated content recognition software. Search terms, so as well as these services displayed on screen, so Google, Bing, Yahoo, we can extract exact search terms from retailer websites as well, a key part on the path to purchase. Video views, so in 2017 we launched our real-life media players data product, and this goes beyond saying that somebody was using Netflix or using Amazon Prime or using YouTube. We can show exact content and the duration and frequency that that content had been viewed for. So we can see what film someone was watching on Netflix or the video title of what someone was watching on YouTube. Shopping behavior. So our newest data product allows you to see the full path to purchase from within Amazon's app or website. So this goes from search terms to product page views to basket ads to purchases. And you can see the product information, so price, product title, shipping cost, all of these different data points that can really add depth and colour to any path to purchase study. And all this data can be used to support a series of different research use cases, which Chris will talk through now.
Yeah, so obviously lots of aspects of the data that have been collected, but what are our clients actually doing with the richness of this data? We see three primary use cases at the moment. The first relates to, I guess unsurprisingly, to video streaming. So with the rise of Netflix and YouTube and Amazon Prime, simply understanding, okay, across particularly mobile and tablet devices, what are consumers doing, what are they watching, and how does that compare and contrast with traditional media? Second use case is, as Chris mentioned, around consumer journeys. So in the run-up to a purchase or possibly a non-purchase, what journey did the consumer take sequentially? So we're obviously talking about capturing single source data on a real human individual who's living in the omnichannel world. They're being exposed to and consuming media both offline and online. They're moving around in location in terms of where they go, and that might be to retail points of presence. They're researching products online on manufacturer sites and so on. They may be transacting offline or online, but understanding that journey and the different influences is another primary area that our clients are looking at. And then the third one, I think, is to complement survey research. So survey research has a huge place in the industry, and that I think will persist. But there are areas where behavioral data is absolutely complementary. It may be that recalling media consumption, particularly on mobile devices, is better done by actually measuring the media consumption rather than asking a consumer to remember how much they were using, let's say, social media apps last week. Similarly, you can target respondents for survey research based on the behaviour. So if you see someone browsing, or a cluster of people browsing automotive websites, then maybe they're relevant for a survey piece of work around your new vehicle purchases. Similarly, if you have survey data, you may want to contextualize it in the context of the behaviour that you see on those same individuals. So you can effectively overlay or append additional data on those same individuals to a survey data set. Okay, so moving on, Chris is now going to talk a bit more about the practical aspects of how we actually capture data and process it for our clients.
Okay, so I'm going to spend some time showing how RealityMine have streamlined taking what is a complex, unstructured data set and making it ready for you to generate a higher quality of insight for your clients. And we can group that path to insight into 5 key stages. So data capture, this is the raw event data that's logged on the device by the Reality Meter software. Processing, so this is how we cleanse and categorize and transform event data into user behavioral data. Querying, so you can think of this as the data handover, so how RealityMine help you access the data you need to support your research brief or project. Integration, this is merging passive data with any other data streams you might have on those same respondents, so how this can be used to support a single source research methodology. And analysis, how passive behavioral data can be used in the tools that you're comfortable and familiar with using day to day. Okay, so this is a UK example of one of our data products, real life websites, that shows real user behavior on internet browsers, so the sites they're accessing on their devices. So I'm using a UK example, but of course we're a global company having run projects in more than 25 countries. So at the top of the slide, you see what we would call the raw event data. So there's not a lot of meaning to it. It's varies in structure. It's quite complex to work with. At the bottom of the screen is this data post-processing. So what you can see is that we output a tabular format of either page domains, that's the top level website, still giving the detail at the full URL level, but parse out the search terms, the category of the website, and also give user durations at both the page level, so how long they've spent on particular pages, but also how long those users have spent on a particular domain. So you can create your duration metrics or average duration metrics, frequency metrics from this data. And some of our clients take those data feeds and import them into their own DMPs and use them in that way. But we recognized that we needed to go one step further to make this data truly research ready for the industry. So this is a screenshot of our product Reallife Answers, which is a web application that lets researchers author a survey, but then rather than that survey being sent out to respondents for them to answer, it's asked against passively collected data. So the example on screen says we're asking respondents if they used Just Eat over the last 60 days, and that would be something difficult for a respondent to recall. Whereas if it's asked against passive data, we get an exact measure. Now, importantly, this data is outputted at respondent level, and that makes it really easy to integrate alongside other data sets. So using a common panelist identifier, it can be blended alongside any existing panelist demographics that you have on your research participants, or indeed any other complementary survey data that has been used to support the project. And all of that data can be easily ingested into the tools the researchers are used to working with day in, day out. So whether that's SPSS or Excel or MTabs, it's easily loaded via either Excel format or SSS format into those tools.
Okay, so just a few words on recruiting participants. I think as we mentioned at the top of the webinar, RealityMine doesn't own its own research panel. So we work with the research industry either directly with panel companies or with research agencies who may own their own panels, whether those be access panels or panels that support syndicated products, whatever it might be. I think very important to note that the passive metering, as done with RealityMine, is entirely GDPR compliant, so it's strictly permission-based, strictly opt-in, with complete clarity around what data is being collected, how it's being processed, for what purpose. So we work with different respondent groups. Often that'll be online panels where we're building digital and behavioral profiles, helping target respondents for surveys. That's kind of a classic quant application. But equally, this can be used for qual research. So we've worked with agencies who are more at the qual end, working with relatively small numbers of people, but getting very rich digital ethnography. So really getting a deep understanding of digital journeys of participants, potentially in a very niche category or for a niche product. For community panels or custom panels, a lot of this is about understanding the competitive environment. So it may be that clients with their digital platforms have actually quite a lot of visibility and understanding of journeys within their own environment. But when customers and individuals disappear off into the wilds of the internet, they may not understand what journeys those people are taking when they're off their own platforms. And of course, with metering, you can actually establish that view longitudinally over a period of time on a large number of people. Okay, so now we're going to move to a quick case study.
So this is a case study looking at passive behavioural data at an individual level. So the infographic shows a respondent browsing for clothes online throughout the day. And I think this is a good example to see the real intricacies of an online path to purchase. So we see a variety of different websites being used and different products being searched for. You can see kind of repeat visits to websites. So you look, for example, there's an 11-hour gap between the same item being browsed for throughout the day. And this data allows end clients to identify any key touch points on the path to purchase, potential influential moments in any on that purchase decision journey. But what it also does is it gives brands in-depth visibility outside of their own website analytical walls. So a lot of brands have really good analytical tools that can show their journeys when they're on their own brand's website. But what it misses is, well, what sites were they browsing 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after? And that can lend itself to competitive landscape analysis or loyalty metrics, or maybe disloyalty metrics in this instance. Now, while this is at an individual level, a number of our clients have become very adept at scaling this to a quant level. So that allows for these patterns in path to purchase to be observed at scale, and you can see those trends in behaviour at scale.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So this is actually our final slide. We promised a sort of very short and fast 30,000 feet view of passive metering, so that's what we've aimed to do today. Could I just prompt any of you who maybe want to submit a question to now try and do that through the GoToWebinar software? But anyway, this last slide is obviously a jigsaw, and I think one of the things that we firmly believe, based on what we see our clients doing, is that researchers today have this huge array, as the world's gone digital, of not just traditional data sources, but all sorts of new data sources, purchasing data, qual data, churn data, customer sat data, brand tracking, Google Analytics, social media listening, loyalty cards, you name it. But we firmly believe that behavioral data, particularly around the sort of mobile connected consumer, is essential to understand the way the world's moving, and to get that key insight for your brand client. So, okay, that's the end of the kind of talk at you part. I'm now going to have a look and see if we can find some questions. Okay. So here's the first question, Chris. We've got a question. Are there any concerns that since a person knows they're being passively measured, that they may not show their true online behavior and in fact perform for the measurement?
So it's a very interesting question, actually, and what I would suggest is that when we observe the results from the website visitation data, if there is any concern over privacy, within a few days that's completely overcome. And I think we see that people are actually very honest with that, because these are the primary devices that they use day in, day out. So if the incentive levels are right, and because of the minimal disruption that the application has on the devices, I wouldn't suggest that that was a major concern for our clients or for us in terms of it changing people's behaviour.
Great. Next question, coming in from New York, I think. Are you able to measure ad exposure, YouTube, also in app?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Now, for iOS, that's no issue. We can report that. For Android 7 and above, in terms of the operating system version, there are some in-app limitations in terms of it's essentially certificate pinning. That means that secure data within those applications can't be measured. But we've developed some capabilities that don't rely upon observing the web data to be able to plug that gap to an extent. So for Android 7 and 8, for example, we can see the overlay text of any advert. So we do have capabilities in that area.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Next question. Hi, for what time in period will a person be tracked? Well, maybe I'll answer that one. It's really a function of the research application and the use case. So we do fairly short, sharp projects. It may be that an agency has a client in a certain category and they want to track people for a couple of weeks on journeys that they may take related to that category. Equally, a lot of the metering that we do is for longitudinal panels where data is being produced literally on a daily basis. And so it's really a panel of N thousand people is being replenished over time to sustain a certain desired sample size, but people may remain in that panel for many months. Okay, let's pick up. Thank you for all your questions. There's actually an awful lot here. Let's move on. Okay, here's one. This is getting quite technical. Can you tell a bit more about how the client-friendly APIs and data access tools would work in practice?
Sure. So in terms of our client-friendly APIs, so we expose a lot of our what we would class as panelist compliance data via a series of APIs that run from our central software. So what that allows our clients to do is ingest key data points in terms of last data submitted date, panelist status, various like configuration settings. So that can be fed into any in-house panel management tools that are being used. In terms of our data access tools, I mentioned Reallife Answers before, and that allows for researchers to extract respondent level data feeds that are tailored towards a research project. We're also developing another product called Reallife Extracts, which allows for a full like data product set to be extracted based on a given date range. So our standard method of delivering data is daily feeds to an SFTP, but we know that with Reallife Extracts, this is going to allow for data sets to be extracted a lot more easily.
Okay, so let's change tack. What is the right incentive level for passive metering? That's a really interesting question. Maybe we both want to comment on that one. Maybe if I just comment first, Chris. So I think it's interesting that one of the, things we've been working on very hard at RealityMine for the last couple of years is to improve respondent experience. So rather than think of passive metering as something that's challenging for the respondent in terms of bad experience, has all sorts of privacy concerns, so you end up feeling that you need high incentives to retain respondents in a study, we've been making the journey towards what we like to call frictionless passive, so trying to make the respondent experience as good as possible in terms of installing the software, whether that's a dedicated app or using an existing survey app that has an SDK inside. And then over time, the experience should have minimal impact from the metering because of technologies like on-device VPN. So you don't have issues that historically I think meters may have suffered from, things like IP blocking, latency, battery life degradation, and so on. So a lot of our clients have now been doing metering for quite some time, and of course have done their own research on the trade-off between incentive levels and retention. So it really is a function of how the meter is configured, length of the project, and the value exchange that the panel owner is able to make with that panelist, which varies from case to case.
And I think there's also an element of the panelist onboarding or client onboarding, so making sure that any privacy concerns or that the panelist is aware of any potential impact of the application. So ensuring that only the data that's needed for the project is collected is also a key way to make sure that incentive costs can be reduced.
Okay, so this is an interesting question, Chris. Just moving on. Can we create a multi-device monitoring exercise where PC, tablet, and other connected devices can be monitored as part of one consumer's journey? Yeah, we hear this question a lot.
Yeah, and our product development has meant that we've tried to reduce the number of steps for a respondent to install multiple applications across their devices. So we do support that, and all of those can be joined by the same panelist identifier. So across any smartphones, any tablets, any desktops in the household, they can all be joined and viewed as a collective. So yes, we support that.
And as a real life example, I think probably all of us here shop on Amazon, and I suspect we may shop from our smartphones, from our tablets, and our desktops or laptops. So yes, to Chris's point, that all of those could be metered. Our software covers Android, iOS, Mac OS, and Windows. We also do, in our new Real Life Shopper beta product, some email scanning. So in the event that you do purchase something on Amazon, even if the device you may have shopped on, which may have been, for example, your work PC, isn't metered, we can still pick up some of that information via email scanning. So a number of ways of triangulating towards seeing the behavior, but the short answer is yes. Okay, let's look at another question. This one's a challenging one, Chris. Are smart TVs also fair game? We should talk a little bit about ACR and a little bit about encryption.
Yeah, so we don't support smart TVs per se in terms of like Netflix measurement or YouTube measurement. What we do support is for any predefined adverts, we can use a combination of digital fingerprinting and our ACR technology, so that's automated content recognition, that can be installed on a user's smartphone that can pick up when they've been exposed to particular adverts. So that would work across radio, smart TV, or indeed any other kind of tablets that were broadcasting that at the time.
Okay. Are there any final questions? I think that's it for now. Okay, everyone. Well, thanks for. We thought we'd try and keep it fairly short. Thanks for joining our webinar. As I mentioned at the start, this is the first of a series of webinars. We intend to do another one covering our Real Life Shopper product, which very much focuses on Amazon and journeys within the Amazon world. And we also intend to run some joint webinars with some of our clients, sharing some of the things they're doing with passive metering. So watch out for emails from us on those. If you haven't registered on our website to get updates from RealityMine, please do. You can find that easily enough. And of course, it goes without saying, if any of you would like to follow up, please drop us an email, and I would love to talk to you about passive metering. I think we'll wrap it up there and look forward to talking to you guys in the future.